Hello, this is Amy, and I am back at it again, not with something nerdy like you might think, but with something dramatic. We are talking about the high school Canadian teen drama Degrassi: The Next Generation, which is the sequel spinoff to Degrassi Junior High from the 80s. It is something that I grew up watching and was extremely excited when I got back into it lately, and I started listening to Degrassi podcasts, and that is how I got to know this lovely woman right here, Jen of Lisa and Jen Go Canadian A. Thank you so much for joining me, Jen.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk about Degrassi.
So excited. You have no idea. Yes, we are going to talk about our favorite Degrassi couples today. And we each gave each other a list of top 5, and 2 of them were the same. So it seems like we're on the same page in a lot of ways. I'm very excited for that. So before we get started, just going to talk about what I have coming up, and then Jen will introduce herself and let you know what's going over there on Go Canadian A. And those of you that have seen the show know that that's a reference to the Jay and Silent Bob movie that they integrate in there. I don't know if that was that season 5 or something like that.
It's at the end of season 4.
Into season 4. I knew you would know the exact citation. Yeah, that was always a funny and interesting part. And if anyone has seen the Drake's music video, I'm Upset, Jay and Silent Bob have a special part where they give Snake weed. It's really funny. So if you're interested in seeing the Degrassi crew back together, check out Drake's I'm Upset. That is super fun. But as for what is coming up on the Amy Blackfire podcast / YouTube channel, it's May, which means it's my birthday month. And yes, I am that annoying person who says birthday month, even though technically it's only one day. I have this thing once a month called Buddy Banter, and more like pseudo-monthly because I skipped last month. But I have a friend on to talk about a topic of their choice. And I have had 4 buddies so far, but it's my birthday month and I'm choosing the topic. So I am going to have a special Buddy Banter with myself and hopefully all 4 of the previous buddies. 2 of them are in Europe, so we're hoping to get a time that works for everyone. But that is the only time that I go live on my YouTube channel. So if you want to come and join the chat, please keep an eye out on my channel and also on my Twitter. I will be plugging the hell out of that when that comes. I have some more Game of Thrones / A Song of Ice and Fire stuff coming up. And I am also extremely excited for some working with Lo the Lynx, aka Lynx Fire content. That'll be coming at you soon. I am taking off all of June because I am getting married. So I've got to take some time for myself and my future hubby. So we are going to have a really good time, though, in May and in July. So please stick around for that and keep an eye on my Twitter feed. So, Jen, tell us a little bit about your podcast and what you guys have coming up.
Okay, so I co-host a podcast called Lisa and Jen Go Canadian A. Basically, last year, as I'm sure many of you did, I was looking for TV shows to binge, and I came across a Twitter account called Degrassi No Context, which
is I love
possibly the biggest Degrassi Twitter there is. And those girls are so lovely that run that Twitter. I came across it and I was like, you know what? I haven't watched Degrassi since I was in high school. I wonder what's going on with that. So I grew up with the next generation, with the Drake generation, as we sometimes call it.
Yes, indeed. I know, I still see him and I'm like, oh, it's Aubrey Graham. I still
exactly.
And I'm a Drake fan. I love hip hop, but it's just that's how I saw him, was Jimmy, you know?
Yes, exactly. So I still to this day call him Jimmy. And so I watched the whole thing through. I had not finished. I had not seen through Next Class or anything. So I finally finished it last year.
I stopped at about I think season 12 or 13, right when Claire was really starting to get annoying.
Right.
And so I hadn't seen Next Class, and I just finished Next Class 2 days ago. So I officially have seen all of the 2000s Degrassi.
Yes. So yeah, I finished it last year for the first time, but I'd seen I'd say 1 through 6 multiple times before this.
Definitely,
that's my favorite generation.
Yes.
And so I decided was like really wanting to talk to people about Degrassi. And so I came up with this idea with my friend Laura at the time, who does season 1 with me. I was like, how about you watch the show? She loves Drake and she had never seen the show.
Yes, so I love the whole first season. Yeah. She was like, my boyfriend, my hubby Drake. It was really funny.
So I forced her to watch the show with me. And then she was just feeling a little bit overwhelmed with like work and, you know, life stuff. And so my friend Lisa over, who had also not ever seen the show. So Lisa has done seasons 2 and 3 with me, and she's going to continue on. We have Laura back every once in a while, and she's still watching the show and enjoying it. So
yes, I love when the trio is when you're all there. I just listened to one of your episodes from season 2, and it was all 3, and I was like, the ladies are all together.
Yes. Yes. So she was just on our You Got the Look episode a couple weeks ago, and we have just last week put up our Pride episode. And then this week we are putting up our Gangsta episode. So we're getting deeper into season 3, and season 3 is my favorite season. So I'm very excited to share season 3 with everybody.
Oh, that is so exciting. Yeah, and we, sorry, listeners, we are having a little bit of some audio difficulties. We are just going to plow right through because our level of Degrassi will sustain us, and we are going to keep going. So, Jen, are you ready to talk about some Degrassi lovin'?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So one of the 2 couples that we both had in our top 5 was the beautiful Paige and Alex. I was obsessed with them, and I have green eyes and blonde hair like Paige, and I'm bi, so I like my dream woman is Alex, because I love the contrast of this like kind of blonde perky girl with this, you know, wrong side of the tracks, kind of like a West Side Story lesbian going on, and I love it. I think that the way that Alex, when they're together, the reason I like them the most and why they made their top 5 is that when they're together, it seems like they want to improve each other, you know, like they want to be the best that they can be for each other. And that's really what a good couple is, in my opinion. People that grow together and want to be better for each other.
Yes. I always loved Paige. She's one of my favorite characters. I know she has her bitchy moments, but she's also so funny. Yeah. And I related to Paige a lot on the show, and some of the things she went through. Obviously, it was not the like popular mean girl, but I still like loved her. And growing up, like especially the first time I watched through the show, I didn't know why they meant so much to me because I did not know I was bi yet. And it kind of like through watching that show and a couple other shows during that time kind of figured it out. So it was
oh my gosh,
it was really cool to see.
It was a part of both of our bi awakening.
Exactly.
I think in particular it's this scene where they're dancing and where the guy who ends up getting engaged to Manny. I'm totally blanking on his name. Jay. And Jay is just being a little bitch over there, being like, oh, wait, you're just doing this to turn guys on. It's like, or they're doing that for themselves, Dick. The way, like, seriously, when I rewatched that scene where Alex puts on the cowboy hat, I was like, oh, yeah, I was bi the whole time because she's gorgeous. Right? And I am so into them dancing and grinding on each other. And I think what I really liked about that, too, is it kind of gave Jay some growth because he had to eventually accept that just because he had been with Alex, just because she had been in a heterosexual relationship doesn't mean that, you know, when she says I'm a lesbian, just believe her, right? She's telling you what she is, just say, okay, that's it. So I think that Paige and Alex together made Jay a better person and then made him a little bit more worthy of Manny, though no one is worthy of Manny if we're being honest, so.
Exactly. No, I know that a lot of people have a lot of gripes with the whole Paige not ever saying she's bisexual on the show.
I have heard that, like,
the writers kind of treat this like this is a phase for her or something. You're like, but I think that honestly, it's kind of true of real life of like, she didn't know. She was just like, I can't be gay because I like guys or whatever, but she didn't
have the
words
vocabulary
yet,
in 2006.
Exactly.
And I really think about that is that a lot of the reason that I didn't come out of, quote unquote, come out of the closet until 25 is you can pass because you do like guys and you do date guys. So it's like, well, I guess I'm just and then there's this term bi-curious, which is usually used for women, and it's almost seen as like, oh, well, women are beautiful, so of course and that's actually, I have a good friend named Rohan who was on one of my episodes about Cersei. I don't know if you've seen Game of Thrones, Jen, but that's what I usually talk about. And she was talking about how women are trained to be objects of beauty, therefore it's easier for women to accept bisexuality because women are beautiful. And we're taught that they are kind of are objects of for our affections. And so like I do think that you have a good point, Jen, and that like that she never comes, quote unquote, comes out as bi, like for example Miles Hollingsworth does, right? And I think for a guy you have to literally like put a label on it much quicker than as a woman, because people would just be like, oh, she's just, they're just like, they're having a sleepover and having a pillow fight and kissing. It's almost been kind of like female bisexuality is actually in many ways much more invisible than male bisexuality, just because it's seen as, oh, you just had a crazy night or whatever, you wanted to experiment. And actually, I think, Jen, was it you when I was listening to, I think it was one of your episodes about season 2 where you're like, Paige is really the only one from that class that I like. Were you the one that said that?
No, I honestly love all of them.
That was Degrassi the Next Pod. This is what happens when I listen to too many Degrassi podcasts. So someone in Degrassi Next Pod had said that, and I kind of like, I like all of them for different reasons, but as far as, looking at that graduating class, like Paige was absolutely my favorite from that. And I also think that like I really like that scene with Spinner later in the seasons when they're about to graduate, and he's like, she used me for my body. It's just one of the funniest lines that Spinner could have said, because it's like usually it's kind of a gender role reversal where she was like, oh, that was fun, I'll always remember my first boyfriend, and he was like, but wait, she used me. So I feel like the confidence that Paige brings, even really, I would say with that relationship, even though Alex does kind of, make some of the initial moves, it really feels like Paige is in charge, large and in charge. And she kind of drives their relationship. But I do think there is that kind of point there that she doesn't really label herself. And I think that is probably more realistic than her being like, it's 2006 and I'm bi, right?
Yeah, I think in my mind, like she starts using that label like well into her 20s, and not, as a teenager, which I completely understand.
Yeah, and I mean, we don't see her after like her first year of university, right? Maybe her second year, she like goes around and joins the LGBTQ club and all of that. And it is interesting, actually, Jen. What do you think about them showing the college years for the early classes and then later only showing high school years? I found that really interesting. Like we see Ellie, Marco, Paige, etc. beyond their high school years, but then when we get up to like, the Holly Jays and the Savs, it starts to get where it's like, okay, they graduated Degrassi, you'll never see them again. They might do a random cameo in next class.
Right. So I think at that time I was just like really holding on to those classes, I was watching for them. And, I did watch through the transition seasons and stuff, everything. And I think that I was like living from episode to episode of those those characters because I knew and loved them so much. And maybe the time didn't give quite as fair of a shot to the new classes as I do, and I appreciate them more now. So I really loved them growing up, and Free Fallin', which is another Palix episode, is one of my favorite episodes of Degrassi. So I really do like and appreciate them, but it felt like a different show. So
yeah, it was like
maybe
Degrassi College or something.
Right.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, if they would have done like Degrassi the College Years or something, like a separate show, but I think that they were really hyper-focused on that. And I think it was actually to kind of transition us like OG fans who started watching from season 1. Like I remember when I started watching was probably 2003, so it was in season 3 and it was still airing. And so by the time I got to season 6 and 7, I was like, no, my characters are going away. And I think it was their way of weaning us off of those characters and then getting us introduced to and actually, I do have a special place in my heart for like the Sav and Holly J class because they're class of 2011, which is my class. So I'm like, oh, I kind of like them, but like just having these original classes, of Paige and Alex, Jimmy, and then of course my dear Spinner, who always had a special place in my heart. He's so dumb that he's beautiful and wonderful. But I think that like specifically this relationship, and this is something that I kind of told Jen a little bit before we started recording, is that the lesbian relationships in Degrassi are like chef's kiss. They do a really good job. And I really have some gripes about the gay male relationships because you have Marco, who, Paige's brother was kind of leading him on really in the beginning. And then, later, he had this like, oh, I'm going to college, so I don't want to be tied down. And it's like, okay. And then you have, of course, later, you have Tristan with his teacher, just like, guys. And then, and also, oh my God, don't get me started on Tristan and Miles. I cannot with them.
Not a fan.
Not a fan. So I do appreciate that Degrassi, quote unquote, goes there when it comes to gay relationships. And they were doing that really early with Marco and having Elias, his beard and everything. But Marco doesn't really get a beautiful relationship like Paige and Alex do. I mean, of course it doesn't last, but they do have a couple of episodes where they do have that kind of like dating bliss, if you will.
Yeah, it makes me really sad for Marco that I didn't like any of his relationships because I love him so much as a character and I loved his friendships.
He was the best friend to everyone.
Yes.
And then, of course, his journey with his very Italian parents accepting him. Yeah. They do a good job as far as the parents not accepting them storylines, but they don't stick to just that. They also have other things going on, which I appreciate. Because often, like, I was afraid they were going to do that with Adam's character, where it's just all about them being trans. But then it opened up to other storylines. And I really do appreciate that about Degrassi. They don't dwell on that very easy storyline of coming out.
Right.
But yeah, do you have any more thoughts on Paige and Alex before we go to the next couple?
Just that I love them. And I know that they had some toxic moments or whatever, but I feel like their ending was not my favorite in Love is About the Field.
Yeah.
But I think that they just had a hard time writing them in college to like figure out what to do with them, and I don't know that they necessarily were looking to make couples end game, quote unquote, at that time either. So I hate that ending for them, but I loved them as a couple.
Absolutely. And we do get those like 2 to 3 episodes back to back where it's like you can just appreciate the Palaks.
Right.
And also I think it's really classic. They do the same thing with Alex Rivas, where they take the mean girl bitch and they are like, but she's queer, so, and now she's nice, and I'm like, dang it, now I care about them. And like Paige was like the like prime example of that. And then I feel like Alex Rivas's storyline is only as rich as it is because they kind of had a trial run with Paige.
Right. Yeah. I can only speak to, I've only watched Next Class once, so I didn't like grow as attached to that class in particular, but she was a great character, Zoe. I liked her.
Great, yeah. So Paige and Alex Palaks, if you will, was one of the 2 that we both had on our top 5, and the other one also, maybe we've just got a thing for the lesbians. The other one also is Imogen, Fiona and Imogen. Them. Just freaking love them. I also now realize, after rewatching Degrassi, where my thing for girls with dark hair and blue eyes comes from. Hello, Fiona. I mean, she's gorgeous.
Yes.
Please follow the actor who plays her on Instagram, by the way. And she is a really, really great follow. And she is just as gorgeous as this. She's a blonde now, though. So I'm like, you're pretty, but I don't know. I liked you with the dark hair. But you do you, girl. Annie Clark. Yeah. She is amazing.
Gorgeous. And she follows me on Twitter, and I just
my God, that's the dream, Jen.
You know, right? I just love her.
Oh my God. I really liked my favorite thing I think about the Fimogen storyline is Imogen's issues with her father's dementia and how Fiona is like really, really trying to be there for her. But then also, I think that like one thing about that is I have this this picture that I took from a gift where she's like, don't ever leave, okay? Like, I feel like in the beginning, Fiona really needed Imogen, and then toward the end of the relationship, Imogen needed Fiona. So they kind of balanced each other out as far as needing help. And I think that, you know, Fiona, especially in the beginning, she was such a loner at Degrassi. She really didn't have anyone except for her brother, and, you know, they had a kind of like slightly like emotionally incestuous relationship, which is highlighted when they're back in New York. And that's actually my favorite, the Degrassi one. What they go to LA, Vegas, and New York, right? Are those the big three? I think.
Yeah.
I think my favorite is the Degrassi goes to the New York. LA almost beats it, but I think it's because I love Holly J so much. Except for I saw on Twitter though, someone had posted from one episode where Holly J's hair was just whack. One eepisode where it was like, and you're like super soccer mom vibes, and I'm like, yes, she has the soccer mom poof. But I love Holly J and Fiona's, like how Fiona was really lost after realizing that Holly J was the only woman she had loved, and you know, you always fall for the straight girl, classic. But finally,
although is she straight?
I know. Come on, Holly J. Don't be boring.
No, there's no way she's straight.
Come on, Holly J. Maybe Holly J, like in her late 20s, early 30s, is gonna have like a realization that actually she really did love Fiona. Anyway, this is my headcanon. But we do have this. What I kind of liked about these two is that they were both feminine. And you often see lesbians when they are portrayed in media as one being like, quote unquote, the butch, and the other being the quote-unquote lipstick lesbian. And I really appreciated that Fiona and Imogen are both like fashionistas, you know, and it's not the classic like, oh, well, who's the quote-unquote man in this relationship? Because that's so reductive, and it tries to put it in this heteronormative kind of organization. And so I really appreciated that about Fimogen.
I think what I love so much about Fiona's storyline in general is obviously like, in season 9, especially into the movie, we see that codependency with her brother. Yeah. And then she decides to break away from her brother a little bit. I mean, and her New York life, move back to Toronto, and she latches on to Holly J in that way a little bit, you know? And
absolutely.
Then once Holly J leaves, she's like, okay, what am I like supposed to do, you know? And I loved that, you know, in 11B and into 12, that her finding her footing and becoming kind of like a leader at Degrassi, and, you know, her friendships with Eli and Fiona, and then
their theater kid vibes, man. Yeah, and that's really kind of how Imogen started to, you know, take notice of Fiona, is they were both, you know, Imogen was the actor, and then Fiona was the director. So you had this kind of like theater love. And as a theater kid, I really appreciated that. So
you know, I've seen complaints about like Fiona was on Degrassi for too long or whatever, and I like hate that because I think she grew so much, and I love her entire arc. There's nothing in there that seems like superfluous to me, or like, you know, she didn't need to be around. I don't know. I loved her.
I definitely did not feel that. Yeah, whenever they like make it so that a student is held back a year, if I like that character, I'm like, woo! But then if I don't like them, I'm like, you can just go ahead and make them graduate like through summer school or something. But Fiona was definitely one of those where I was like, yes, she has to stay at Degrassi another year. But I don't know. I really liked that Fiona was there for so long. And I also, something I liked about her is that her mom was like, oh, you're a lesbian, cool. They didn't do the whole like, oh, their parents kicked them out, because like that can't be every single gay kid's experience. You know, some of them are gonna have liberal parents. You know, and like they're from Manhattan. Like they set them up as this like these like rich but slightly liberal kind of family. So I feel like I really liked that a lot. And it was also hilarious to see, like, if you look at Annie Clark's socials, she's super into being from Toronto. So it's hilarious that she plays a New Yorker being in Toronto on the show. But I think she did that, the homesick kind of rich student who just can't wait to get back to New York really well. And then all of a sudden to see it shift where her mom's like, all right, we're going back to New York. And she's like, no, I'm staying here. I really like that twist of like going from the homesick girl to falling in love with Canada.
Right. Yeah, I love that. And I think, you know, we saw that Fiona stayed an extra year, and they kind of tried to like mirror that a little bit with Imogen, and they didn't do as good of a job, I think. Because, I mean, Imogen had some great moments in 13 and 14, but I wish they had focused more on her home life and some of her friendships like they did with Fiona in her final season, instead of like pushing her to Jack, and we didn't get that relationship very well developed. So I don't know. I just
that
felt
is
like we needed
and
more
her
home
and Jack,
life.
like that's definitely like the worst queer relationship, probably one of the worst that we see. And this is something that I was talking to Jen about. I don't like that we don't see a poly relationship. It looked like Jack was going to be poly, and then when Imogen said, "Oh, you're just scared," and I was like, oh no, please don't say that. Oh, don't tell me they're going to just fit her back into, you know, monogamy. And they did exactly what I didn't want them to do, which was be like, you're right, I was just scared of love. And I'm like, oh, like I have poly friends and I've seen it work. And that's the one place that, you know, Degrassi, we go there, but that's the one place they did not go, is an actual poly relationship that is healthy and that everyone is on the same page. You know, you had Zig with Esme and Frankie, and that was just screwed up. You know, and then you had Jack.
They were all at bad places in their lives.
Exactly. It was just all like, it was like just a like, hey, we're all messed up fest, you know? And because, you know, Frankie had the whole, she's actually racist thing storyline, which one thing about Next Class, I'm not sure, because you said you've only seen it once, Jen, and I have as well, but it's much more recent for me. They finally did a lot of like the Gen Z kind of questions, like the kind of cancel culture and the idea of being woke. Like I was like, that would be interesting to see in Degrassi, because, you know, they don't usually shy away from these questions. And, you know, like in the early seasons, like with Liberty and stuff, we don't see too much with racism, and like, you know, it's there. And so what they ended up doing with Tiny, and what they ended up doing with also before Next Class, they had Dallas, you know, how he was like, he talked to Connor and was like, dude, we're black. Like, this affects our life. Don't you see that? I was like, finally, Degrassi, quote unquote, went there. But it wasn't until like season 12. So I think that Next Class, like, in many ways overcorrected, I think, a lot of the complaints from the later seasons of Degrassi. But that is one thing that I did appreciate about Next Class, is they did kind of go for that. It was more diverse. You know, Degrassi has always been, quote unquote, diverse for the time. But I would say that Next Class is where you really get that, like, you know, full on the white actors are almost in the minority, which I appreciate.
Yeah. I think that, you know, moving forward, if and when we get a new Degrassi reboot, I think what we really need to focus on, I say we, like I have any say in it, but
call us, call us whoever what is it? Who's the name of the creator or the producer? Jen? Is it also
Steven
Jen?
Stone.
Okay.
Linda Schuyler.
Linda, I don't know why I was calling her Jen. That's you. No, but they should call Jen Degrassi. She knows what's up.
Yes. But what you need to focus on, Linda and Steven, is hiring writers of color for your writer's room, because that is really where Degrassi is lacking.
Very much so. Yeah. If you're trying to show as real as you can high school experiences, you want younger and more diverse writers. You know, like old white ladies and old white dudes aren't going to be able to really, I mean, and you know, what's interesting too is a lot of the reasons I like the earlier seasons is because you know, you and I were going to high school in the early to mid 2000s, right? Whereas like the next class, it's like, oh wow, like I got a phone with internet where you didn't have to, oh my God, hurry up and exit out of it if you accidentally do it. Like I didn't get a smartphone until I was 17. So you know, there are all these like storylines.
21.
So I know, right? So in next class, there's all these storylines about social media, and I'm just like, I don't relate as far as my high school experience. But you know, I know there are some Gen Z watchers that would be like, oh my God, I remember that time like my nude got put up on Instagram or something like that. So it's like, oh wow, you know. But when it started getting to like Allie's class, you know, where they have like the sexting and stuff, it's like I'm like, okay, well that's my college experience. So like that's definitely why I am more attached to the earlier seasons. But that being said, like Fiona and Imogen and how they kind of were, I see their class, you know, same thing with like Sav and Holly J as like the transitional class from young millennials to Gen Z. And I do think that they did a good job setting up for, you know, next class. And you know, they really should not have gone with Netflix though, because Netflix cancels shows like there's no tomorrow. Especially after
such short seasons.
10 episodes, you know, and we're used to like 20.
With a big ensemble class.
That's like 40 episodes. Isn't like season 12 or 13 is like 40 episodes or something? Like, I mean, come on. Give us more.
You just can't like develop a cast that big with such little episodes, you know? There's so many people in the Degrassi cast, you know?
Absolutely. And what'll happen is you'll have these like B-plot characters that all of a sudden come in and are important, and you're like, why do I care about them? Because you didn't have the setup.
Right. Exactly.
Because you only have time for the A-plots, and that's something that, like, you know, you and other Degrassi podcasters will talk about, like, in their breakdown of what happened in the episode you're talking about. You're like, okay, the A-plot is this, and the B-plot is this, right? And usually the A-plot is pretty serious, and the B-plot, especially if it has JT in it, tends to be more, like,
a little
humorous.
More lighthearted.
Yeah, and so when you get to next class, you can hardly even develop the A-plot. So the whole formula of that Degrassi had depended on since 2001, right, I think was the first year it came out, Next Gen did, you know, it's kind of thrown off of balance. And you can kind of sense that because of the shorter episodes. So, like, don't sign with Netflix because they'll cancel your show, even if it's popular, and because they'll only do, like, 10 episode seasons because they want to save money. So it's like, sign with Amazon or something, or like Disney Plus
on Twitter and everything.
Yeah.
You know what I've noticed on like Twitter and everything is, you know, when we're recommending the show to someone, I'd be like, okay, millennials start at season 1. You know, zillennials or whatever, you know, in between, you start at season 10 and then Gen Z start at next class. But I noticed on like Twitter and everything is that Gen Z tends to like the original generation better. And I think it's mostly just because those characters are better developed.
I think so too. I mean, you're so right.
The next class characters were great, but you know, the teenagers right now, they like, you know, my generation, the Drake generation best.
Yeah, so that's a great point.
It's crazy to think
and
about.
I think a lot of it is what you were what you were saying earlier, Jen, about like we see the home life of the earlier classes. And what I didn't like about next class is like they were only at school that you really saw them. And like, other than really Alex maybe and her mom, you don't really see their home life. And it's like, okay, how am I supposed to... Yes, and the Hollingsworths, of course, because like they got the big mansion, they have all the parties there. But like, what is JT without his grandmother freaking out when he got when he got Liberty pregnant, right? Like seeing those parents and guardians like reacting to the drama is what made Degrassi so interesting to me.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, since I mentioned JT and Liberty, let's go ahead and talk about something that made your list that almost made my list. I almost put Jeopardy on my list, and I'm glad you did because I want to talk about them so badly. They it's the class, I know, and it's the classic, like she liked him for years and then he ignored her, and all of a sudden, like it's puberty hits and she has a glow up and he's like, ooh, who this girl? So yeah, JT and Liberty, my gosh, they're part of the OG, and you know, Liberty was this overachiever and JT was the class clown. So I mean, talk about perfect, like, you know, opposites attract.
So I think part of what I love about Jeopardy so much is that I relate to Liberty in a big way. And I feel like that like sort of wish fulfillment of, liking a guy for so long and then him finally noticing you is something that I related to so hard in high school. And it's kind of just like on for a while. I mean, now things are different, but I still have such a big soft spot for them and just love them. I really, really loved their relationship, and the build up to it was, it's such a big payoff 4 seasons later. I feel
absolutely. And
slow burn.
And yes, and also the like where they're actually quote unquote getting together is kind of over the summer. So we see the next season and all of a sudden they're like in the hot tub, like totally dating. And you're like, oh, it happened. It really happened. And then, the dad, I love Liberty's parents because there's these like high powered lawyers who want her to achieve everything. And so they're like, they don't want her to be with someone like JT. He's not going. They see it as like, he wants to be a stand-up comic. Like he's not going anywhere future-wise. Yeah. So the heart attack that it gives her parents, I think, is probably one of the best parts about it.
Yeah. I think the whole opposites attract thing was also a big part of why I loved them, with JT being the funny, laid back, like, person, and Liberty being the slightly more uptight, type yeah. A type of person. I loved it. I loved their dynamic so much, and I just thought that they were cool. And the sad JT and Liberty is that we didn't get to see a ton of with them. As soon as their relationship began, we had this drama with the baby, and obviously leading into the tragedy that was JT's death. So it's just I wish we had gotten more happy Jeopardy.
Yes, definitely.
I loved their relationship so much.
And I like how Danny then comes in and like so this was what I ended up picking as a topic for this episode, but I would love to have you back on to talk about Degrassi fights, because Danny's fight with like, you got my sister pregnant, like that is one of my favorite fights in the whole world. We might have to do top 10, frankly, for Degrassi fights, because there's so many of them. Or we could just do like top 5 like fights at Degrassi parties or dances alone as its own category.
Yes.
But I love how Danny gets protective.
I could give a monologue on the Paige and Manny fight. So I will come back for that.
Yes, please do. I would love, that's one of my favorite aspects of it, is like the fights. And then, like one of the reasons that I like the earlier seasons too is that it doesn't have that, like one of the most awkward seasons are when they're wearing uniforms and like there's this crackdown at Degrassi. Oh, yeah. I'm just like I'm not a fan. Like I get why it happened, but I didn't see like the so what for me was never answered, because then like a couple seasons later, like they took down all the security and everything. So it's like, okay, then why did they do this? Was this just like supposed to be the dark times of Degrassi or something like that?
Right.
But just like what I don't
overcorrection.
Yeah, that's the thing, is that like, you have like, going back to JT and Liberty, like they got pregnant in high school. Like every season has the drama. So why all of a sudden was it like, this is too much, Simpsons bringing down the hammer in season, whatever, 10 or 11, whatever it was.
Right.
I was like, really? Now is too much?
The event of the Vegas dance that like led to this thing, I was like, so much worse shit has happened at Degrassi.
I was like, JT got stabbed. Like what?
He got stabbed. Jimmy got shot. There was a gonorrhea outbreak. There was so much.
Seriously, there was like, like Jimmy taking
that was going to happen. It should have happened in season 4. I feel like.
Seriously, and then you've got like bullying and like bullying the teacher, like how Jemmy and Spinner bullied Quan when her husband was going through chemo. Like, come on, like now all of a sudden it's too much. I never quite got that. But JT and Liberty, I think really, you're so right that we did not get enough happy times with them, though. That is definitely my main gripe about Jeopardy for sure.
us Gibberty fans, we've learned to like look for them in the background of shows because what I love also about the early seasons is even if like your favorite character wasn't like a part of the A or B plot, sometimes you see them in the background, and I loved that. So you could see in Bark at the Moon, especially, like JT and Liberty are just like chilling in the background at this dance while Manny is dancing. That cringy scene.
Oh God, it's so bad.
So they're not in the A or the B plot, but they're there at the dance, and it's just fun to see them in the background, just having fun.
Yes, totally. And I also think that like the thing about Gibberty is that like they're kind of the way I see it is they're working off a template of like a tragic love story, because right when JT is like, I still love Liberty, it's like stabby stab stab, and it's like, no, so close.
I gotta tell you that JT's death, I stopped watching Degrassi for months.
I took a break too. After that. I couldn't take it.
I was like, oh, why would you kill JT off? Because he was like one of my favorite characters then. Now my list has changed a little bit, but I loved him so much then as a teenager. And I was just so sad about it. And, it took me a while to get back into Degrassi from that point.
Yeah, I remember letting like a couple of episodes accumulate after that, and then having to like look ahead for when there was a marathon on Teen Nick or whatever so that I could catch up.
Exactly.
But I was like, I can't. You did this. And I remember them having previews, and like we knew something was going to happen because it showed like JT like getting in a confrontation with the people. And like what the saddest thing about it too is that he got basically in debt with them because he was trying to support Liberty and what he thought was going to be their family. So it's also like it's tragic as to like why he was stabbed too.
Right. I think that no death has affected me. No fictional death has affected me as much as JT, and none has since really. Like they really hit me right in the teen years. With that sadness.
Yeah, every time like I tell someone to watch Degrassi and they actually listen to me after I've told them 50 times because they're like, it's so many seasons. I'm like, you don't understand. Like watch and just get to season 3 and then tell me you're not addicted. And like they're always like, I love JT, and I'm just like holding my tongue. I'm like, yeah, me too. Yeah. Like I can't tell them if I don't spoil it.
So I host this podcast with, people who have not seen Degrassi before. And so, that is one of the 2 like major spoilers that I do not want them to find out. And I am like, feel a little evil keeping it from them. So yeah, Lisa loves JP. He's like her favorite character, so she's gonna be devastated.
No, and, Lisa.
I know, it's gonna be so sad. She's gonna like not speak to me.
Well, what's the other one then? Now I'm curious. What's the second one that you're like?
The other big spoiler, especially for her because she is a huge Sema fan. I don't want her to find out about Sema, so Spinner and Emma.
Oh yeah, I was hoping this would come up because. How rushed did that feel, though, Jen?
Yeah.
Like, all of a sudden, it was like, we're getting married. And, like, I get it. Like, there are people out there that have gotten married after 2 months and stuff. But I just really was like, hey, we're both staying in Toronto and not going off to college. Guess we'll marry each other. And I just like, it would have made sense if there would have been more buildup. I don't think they're necessarily incompatible. But they're like, oh, where's that? But they never like directly really interacted, which is why whenever they like tried to do this, like, look, we have all this history. They're like, oh, remember that one time I did your organic health food thing in season 1 or something?
Got boners.
And got a bone. And it's like, really? That's all you got? Maybe this doesn't make sense then, writers.
Right.
Yeah. So actually, while we're on the subject of Spinner, let's talk about something that made my list but did not make yours, which was, I don't know, would you call it Jenner or Spain? I don't know. Jane Spinner. Spain.
Yeah.
All right. So actually I'm curious why they didn't make your list. Is it because she cheated on him?
No, honestly, I do like Spinner and Jane, and I thought they were great for the time. My favorite Spinner relationship actually was Spinner and Darcy. I
Mine
loved
too,
them.
even though he had to like go all Christian for it.
Right.
And
I
then
don't
all
know.
of a sudden Darcy
There was
was like,
something
but
about
wait, I want to be like loose now. And it's like, you just made him a Christian. Now you're
right.
like, but now I want us to be crazy. Like, pick a lane, Darcy.
I think it's probably because I love Spinner's redemption arc so much, and Darcy was a huge part of that I like feel attached to them.
That's definitely a good point.
In season 5. So yeah, I liked Spinner and Jane, but they just were not like a standout for me. And I don't know. Now that I have become friends with people on Twitter and stuff, one of my good friends on Twitter, her name's Lex, and her name is Spinner's Emma on Twitter. I have grown to appreciate Spemma a lot more recently. So yeah, I liked Spinner and Jane definitely, but yeah, not a standout for me.
I think the reason maybe that it was a standout for me was because that was the first relationship where I think Spinner was like 100% supportive.
Yeah.
You know, like when he was with Paige, I mean, that was his first relationship and he was just obsessed with keeping her, right?
Right.
And then, you know, with Darcy, it was like he was just obsessed with making sure that Darcy thought he was good enough. But with Jane, like, especially when he was graduated and working at the Dot and she was still going to school and she was applying to university, like the way that he was so supportive of her, I think was like, you can see it as a practice run for when he marries Emma and is supportive of her, right? Like, right. I just kind of found it like, okay, this is like, you know, now that he's with Emma, you know, that's obviously the most important relationship in his life. But I would say if you picked any other relationship where he grew the most, it would be with Jane. Yeah. And I really think that the reason they didn't work, a lot of it, well, there are multiple reasons, but one of it is that, you know, Jane was wanting to go off and do her own thing. And that's why I think then Spinner and Emma got together, because what I liked about Emma's storyline is that she was the one that you thought, other than Liberty, was like the most likely to succeed in college. And then you see Liberty killing it, and then Emma just totally like having such a hard time. And I will say this, though, as someone who has dyscalculia, I kind of hate that they gave Liberty dyscalculia and then just dropped that like a hot potato. And it was like, now she's good at school again.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, no, that's a lifelong struggle. I still cannot do basic math. So I like that you had Emma, who was like, oh, of course she's going to kill it at Banting. And then she has all this pressure and she drops out. And then, you know, gets with Spinner. And, you know, at first it looked like settling when I first saw it. But then I realized it's really more that Emma had been told that this is what she needs for herself, what she should be doing. But at the same time, just because, you know, her Spike gave her all of the opportunities possible, but that doesn't mean that she's going to be college material just because you hope and wish and push her to be a college girl, you know?
Right.
And I think Jane, honestly, I feel like, was that college girl, but she was like, you didn't expect her to be. Kind of like with Alex when she was like killing it academically in her last year. You're like, go girl, go.
Yeah, I think honestly with Emma, she was so into the idea of creating a family for herself because it was just her and Spike for all those years. And she didn't really know her dad. I think that pushed her to wanting to settle down a little earlier in life than some of her peers. And, you know, I think, you know, now I can appreciate Spinner and Emma a lot more. I'm curious, as a Spain shipper, how you feel about the fact that he got married in a matter of weeks after they broke up. I mean, I feel like it was a little disrespectful, honestly.
Yeah. I think that they tried to reconcile that with the scene in the tent where he's getting ready and then Manny comes in and is like, what the fuck? Like, that's one of my favorite, talking about fights, that's probably in my top 5, actually. Yeah. Even though it was not really a fight, it was just like one slap thrown, kind of. Maybe a push. Right. But yeah, no, that's a great idea. That's a great question, Jen, because I really liked them together and I needed time to mourn the death of their relationship, and the show did not let me have that.
The fact that it happens in the same movie.
Right? And it's like, and they had time later. Like, we do see Spinner even in next, and Emma in next class. So it's like, you had time to do that. But I liked that in next class, they were talking about buying a house and they don't mention kids. So in my opinion, they're like kind of doing it what you could consider, quote unquote, the right way. They're trying to settle first and then, you know, get the nest ready for the eggs, if you will. And so I do like that I like them much better after literally the 5 seconds that they get in next class, just because it shows Spinner talking to, you know, Snake. So now his father-in-law, right? But yeah, I hated Spimma for so long just because I was such a Spain, shipper. And so I think that, like, just one episode, Degrassi, one episode where he's single. That's really all I needed. I didn't need that much.
Morning period.
Yes. Yeah, because like they had set it up so much. He was ready to marry her and everything. And did they get engaged or almost engaged? I can't remember.
Almost. I think, didn't they like matching tattoos or something?
Yeah. Like, you know, as close for Jane as you can get, because she is.
And he was like ready to follow her to California. Yeah.
Like the fact that he was willing to follow her, I think, is another reason that I'm a Spain fan, because he was obsessed with Paige in an unhealthy way, and he was also like really into Darcy. It was like it's like Darcy was, you know how you're like, oh, be the person your dog thinks you are. Like, that's how it was with Darcy. It's like, I want to be the man she thinks I am. But then with Jane, I felt like it was just like they really worked, and he was willing to follow her to college. And I just thought, like, that's really sweet, and I really wanted it to work out. But at the same time, I am slowly accepting what the canon of Spemma. And I think it's because I have gotten over that initial shock. Like, definitely the first time I watched it, like we said after JT that you stopped watching, after Spemma, I actually also took a break. Those are the 2 times I can remember taking a break. And
me too, honestly. And Degrassi Takes Manhattan was a lot to process.
Yes, it was. And so it was just too much. Like, I can't believe that I was on board for Jay and Manny getting together more than for Spinner and Emma. Like, that doesn't make any sense. But it's because I was so into Jane. But at the same time, look, she done did him dirty by getting with Declan. And Declan's cute, but, like, I don't think he's worth losing such a great guy over, you know?
Oh, yeah.
So I was like,
funny is Manny encouraged her to cheat with Declan, and then she gets mad.
I know.
That was so strange to me. They should not have had Manny be the one who encouraged her to, like, cheat.
Look,
with
Manny was cheating, you know, and we're don't worry, dear listeners, we're getting to Manny and Craig. That is on our list.
Oh, we are.
In fact, we'll talk next. Don't worry. But she was cheated on. So why would she? Or it was also kind of a part of a cheating, like, triangle thing with Ashley and Craig. Why would she then encourage that when she knows, like, the hurt that causes?
Right. It did not make sense at all.
Yeah, I'm not a fan. But enough about Spain, because I'm pretty much just gonna. I don't want to. Everyone's gonna think that I really hate Spemma that much, and it's just because the wounds were fresh. They did not have time to heal.
Just put salt in the wound right away.
Just salt in the wound. So let's talk about a couple that was on your list but not mine, which was Craig and Manny. And I have this picture of them from, like, 7th and 8th grade. Very controversial, actually. I am excited to hear what you have to say, because I was really into them the first watch and when it was airing. And then, like, of course, by the time when Craig was like, oh, I want to be with you, but JK, I'm really with Ashley, I was like, all right, Craig, you can just go, like, suck a whole bag. Because, like, I cannot with you right now. But I will say, one of my favorite episodes, Jen, is their first date episode, where it shows the different POVs, where he's like, this was the worst date ever. And she was like, oh my God, it was amazing. And the meta commentary of him saying she's like my sister when they are actually sisters. If you don't know, dear listeners, Alex Steele and Cassie Steele are sisters. So it's like, that's actually a great meta commentary on Degrassi. And they have that all the time too. And I don't know, have you ever seen Instant Star, Jen? That was also made by So they actually have Degrassi references in there. And one of them is like, one guy is wearing a hat and he's like, oh, what are you, Joey Jeremiah? And I was like, ah!
Oh my god. I haven't watched that in forever either, but I
rewatched it a month ago because I found it on YouTube and I had completely forgotten it existed. I remember I was like, okay, there was this girl and she was kind of goth and she sung, and I remembered the songs too. Like, and it's not an Amy Blackfire episode if I don't break out singing, but it's like, I want to live like music. Like, I remembered all these like songs. Instant Star.
I still know all the songs.
Oh my gosh!
You know, I followed her career a little bit. I've followed her career a little bit, Alex Johnson, and her music, like post Instant Star, is still also really good. So, like, I really enjoy her.
I'll definitely check it out more. Like, I have a lot of the songs from Instant Star downloaded, but I didn't really check out her beyond that. But anyway, I just like that there's like these meta commentaries within the show and across shows, and like that's definitely one of them. When Craig was like, "Manny, act like my little sister," and he's also, isn't that kind of the impetus? Then like that's kind of what encourages in my opinion, the most iconic scene, which is the thong scene, where she's like, "I'll never be seen as young again." Ah, Manny.
Yes. So, little peek behind the curtain. I mean, we just released our You Got the Look episode, and so far the episodes are not released, but we have watched up until Against All Odds, and we just talked about that one. So we are at the very beginning of the Crush Annie triangle, and it's, oh my gosh.
Manny's transformation in these seasons is legendary. I don't think... I mean, and you've talked about this on your podcast too, Jen, which is that like you do any poll or anything, Manny is always like number one for the fans.
Oh,
like she is the favorite. She is the darling.
Fandom wide, she is the darling of Degrassi, yes.
Yeah, and so because of that, it's like you watch these and you're like, dude, Craig, like you're missing out on the best woman at Degrassi.
Right.
Like, why would you do this to yourself? And then the way that, you know, and the abortion episode with her actually didn't even air in America. You had to I actually watched my parents, luckily at that point, had gotten beyond basic cable, so I was able to watch it on the higher channels where it's like, well, if you're paying for the subscription, then we can show you, right?
Wow, I was just in the dark.
Oh no! I actually was talking to a friend about this, and she has only seen really the first 7 episodes, but she was watching along with us like when it was airing, and she was like, I had to like download it off of LimeWire, like or BitTorrent. And I was like, dang, that was a long time ago. But like, yeah, she had to like download it illegally in order to watch it.
I don't know if it was just like I didn't have anyone to talk to about Degrassi. I feel like no one in my like circle back then was watching Degrassi, except for me and my cousin, and we didn't like know very many people who were also watching it. So I was just like super in the dark about that whole plot point, and it wasn't until I think season 5 that they aired it in the US, and it was like some kind of countdown, like, you know, the cast's favorite episodes or whatever, and Cassie picked that one, and that's like how it got aired in America.
That's crazy.
It was so like crazy, and there are some like you know, the characters like allude to this pregnancy and abortion like in later episodes, and they just like went right over my head.
Yeah, because I think
I was like, oh, that was weird.
There was a comment by Darcy, I think, to Manny about someone getting pregnant. She's like, how could they do that? And then Manny said something like, you know, people make mistakes or something. And if you hadn't seen that episode, you'd be like, what do you know, Manny?
Yeah.
But yeah, well, she had gone through it.
Yeah, in season 4, I believe it was In Secret, when Emma and Manny are having that fight about Emma with Jay and the whole gonorrhea thing. She's like, oh, it's not real sex. I'm not getting pregnant. And Manny goes, why are you trying to hurt me? That line went over my head, and I was like, like, was Manny pregnant at some point? Like, I did not catch it the first time.
That's also one of the best gifts from Degrassi is why you're trying to hurt me, and then also you're just jealous. Those are like the top like Manny gifts.
Manny's catchphrase.
Yes. Yeah. Also, while we're on the topic of Manny, Jen, have you noticed where they like made Cuckoo Bananas her like like phrase for like 2 seasons, and all of a sudden it's like she forgot it or something? It's like, what is going on? It was only like 2 seasons, and all of a sudden she's not saying it anymore. I'm like, if you're gonna make it her catchphrase, then stick with it, Degrassi.
I think that what they wanted to change her personality a little bit more post season 4 and not have her be like the alpha bitch anymore.
Yeah.
Like they wanted her to be a little softer in season 5 moving on, which I can appreciate.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, she just kind of like in the beginning, she was Emma's best friend and it didn't seem to have her own storyline. And then I think they overcorrected and gave her too many storylines to where she was like everywhere in anything and also kind of getting on Paige's level of bitching, of being bitchy.
Oh, yeah.
So it's like, okay, when they dialed it back, I was like, thank you. And like the phase where she has bangs, like not my favorite hairstyle of hers, especially when she has the layers that look a little choppy. But that's like that's like the fully developed Manny, though.
Yeah. So let me talk about why I like Cranny. So season 3, obviously bad.
Yeah.
You know, the chemistry was 100 out of 10, but the actions and poor Manny like changing so much about herself to like, you know, be with Craig was bad. And I can fully appreciate why people hate them and hate this relationship, hate Craig, whatever. But honestly, going back to going forward into season 5 is really when I like them. I feel like they have matured a lot more. Manny doesn't care quite as much about like what he thinks of her because she's gone through, you know, so much. And I think that Craig was a little bit more supportive.
Also gave her some like some confidence that she didn't have, especially the you know what your podcast is named after, the Jay and Silent Bob Go Canadian A. After that, she was like, "Hey, I'm talented and I could like go all the way. I could go to theater school and everything."
Yeah. And I think that they were very supportive of each other's, artistic pursuits. Like, she was very supportive of him as a musician. He was supportive of her as an actress. And I liked that. And so season 5 Cranny is what has my heart, really. And what it feels like to be a ghost, it was a personal victimization against me. So
it was
that's
just
the episode where Craig comes back and does coke.
Yes, so bad. Yeah, and then Ashley finds it right, and he's like, "Oh, it's Manny's." It's like, dang it, Craig.
Ellie finds it.
Yes, Ellie finds. Oh God, and okay, let me just say this right now. Ellie is the most judgmental, and I've never understood that. Like, she's this like, oh, I'm super like goth and everything, and I'm super counterculture, and my mom's an alcoholic, and then she goes around judging everyone. I've never understood that about Ellie's character.
Yeah.
Like, that always felt off to me.
Yeah. I think that I am definitely okay with Cranny not being, again, quote unquote, endgame. I think that's very realistic. Like,
yes.
You know, I don't care that she got with Jay later. Like, that's cool, whatever. But I didn't like the ending. I kind of wish they had broken up because of distance or something. You know, I feel like that would have been more like better to me, and also like set Craig off in a better light. Which I can appreciate why people hate Craig. He's done plenty of things that deserve being hated for. But I don't know. I just wish
and I think they tried to make us feel for him by him having bipolar disorder. But you know, I have friends with bipolar disorder, and they always say it's a reason but not an excuse.
Right.
So I just hate when they're like, "Oh, but he's bipolar." It's like, yeah, people can function and have bipolar disorder.
Right. Yeah. So I don't know. I just wish he had gotten a better send off. I mean,
he was their first like kind of like interrogation of mental health, though, and I think they got better with that, especially with Ellie's storyline. But and also, of course, Adam's storyline when Adam has to be greasy for a while. Yeah, and Eli, of course, definitely. Oh my God, Eli's probably the best, like, as far as interrogating like mental health and growing up in high school and all of that.
Yeah, his season 11 storyline was really, really good. Really well done. I liked that arc a lot for him.
Yeah, and one of my factoids about Degrassi is that he's named after Ellie. Like, he's just the male version of Ellie's character. They're like, we need another goth. Ellie. Eli. Okay, we got it.
the Crelly love child. Yeah, he's like an amalgamation of Craig and Ellie.
He totally is.
Yeah.
Like the way that he is with writing is like how Craig was with music. Like whenever he got manic, he would like, pick up his guitar. Same thing with Eli. He would like write crazy crap or, like change the ending last minute of the play.
The love roulette. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. I will say Romeo and Jules is my favorite Degrassi play though.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I love that one too. I also really liked Dracula. Those are my top two, Romeo and Jules and Dracula.
I also did, while we're on the topic for just a second of Romeo and Jules, want to say rest in peace to the actor that played Dave. He did pass away.
Yeah,
I believe 2020 last year. I believe. When I saw
it was just a couple months ago.
Just a couple months ago. Yeah, I think you're right. When I saw the socials of all, because I follow all the Degrassi actors, when they're like R.I.P. Jamal, I'm like, why? Like, that's when I feel like we're definitely grown up, when, like, the people we grew up watching on TV are, like, passing away or, like, getting on their second marriage or something. It's like, oh, we're getting older.
Right.
But, yeah, so I did want to say that, like, I always liked Dave's. Actually, one of the couples that almost made my top 5 was Allie and Dave. I actually really did like them as a couple.
I do, too. Yeah. Not in my top, I don't know where they rank, but not in my top 5 or anything, but I did like them.
They probably make my top 10, I would say.
Yeah.
Especially whenever Allie was like basically on pills and they're broken up and she's like seeing him judging her in her bed. It's like, dang, Allie, get a grip.
Yeah.
Yeah, Cranny, I think you've made a good case for them, actually. This is the first time where I'm like, maybe, season 5, I don't know. Like, starting to I'm kind of come to your side.
And I think that they, the season 3 was bad, but I feel like what I appreciate about their relationship is how much it caused Manny growth. And, without that relationship, who would Manny be? I don't know. I feel like it was integral to her character development. So,
yeah, I think that she realized, like, you need to get with a guy who's obviously all about you and isn't like she was the third and she was the like second choice, and she realized, like, I'm never going to be anyone's second choice again.
Right. Yeah. Love that for her.
So, any last Cranny thoughts?
No, I am starting to appreciate Janny a lot more lately. I was just bitter about the ending of Cranny for a while, but I
totally.
I can appreciate her relationship with Jay, and I definitely appreciate that she didn't end up with Craig because I don't know, it just makes sense. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I also like that it started out of, like, I'm going to be with you to, like, piss off my parents, and then the parents are like, we love this guy, and she's like, no, that's not what was supposed to happen.
Right.
That was really great, where Jay was, like, the guy from the wrong side of the tracks, but then the dad was like, oh, I like a guy that works with his hands, and she's like, this is not what you've been telling me my whole life.
Right.
So I thought they really backfired, and I really love that about it. Okay, so that was one of your couples, Crady. So let's do one of my couples, and that is Adam and Becky. I think that, actually, I don't know if you knew this factoid, Jen. Did you know that the girl that played Esme Song originally auditioned for Becky Baker? Did you know that?
Really? I did not know that.
What a weird AU that would have been for like.
I'm so glad that she plays Esme though, because she knocked that out of the park. Chelsea Clark was so great as Esme.
So good at Esme, and also the third person with the last name Clark to play in Degrassi. So I looked up a bunch of factoids before this. If you haven't noticed, we had Annie Clark, and then the guy who plays Sean also has the last name Clark.
Oh, Daniel Clark, yeah,
Daniel Clark. So she was the third Clark. A very common name, apparently, in Canada. So Adam and Becky, I think probably the reason that they made my top 5 is because of this scene where the dad is like, no, you should totally invite over your boyfriend. And then she invites him over, and then he's like, hey, you're confused. Here's a pamphlet about Christianity.
So heartbreaking.
And it's like, ooh, heartbreaking. And the fact that she went to this, like, week camp, a camp that lasted a week that was supposed to, like, reprogram her to not like Adam, And then she comes back and I'm like, great. I freaking hate Becky. She's the worst. And then she comes back and she's like, Adam, I still love you. And they were wrong. And you're a boy because I like boys. So if I'm attracted to you, that means you're a boy. And I was like, oh, I bawl every time they get back together. I really, really wanted them to work out. And it's really sad the way that it ended with Adam. I would say JT's death definitely is like number one. But I would say Adam's like number two for me. Like
the thing about Adam is I feel like that not only was it devastating, but also disrespectful. I don't know, like disrespectful to his legacy, and the episodes after it was like almost like they forgot about him. Like they never talk about him really. I don't know. It was just upsetting.
Yeah, like there's Drew, I think, mentions it a couple times because Drew kind of goes off the rails a little bit because Adam was really his like moral compass. But I will say that like they do have that scene at graduation where they have the video of Adam and then Becky cries. And so like they did, but you are right though, that like they didn't quite do it as far as like, really remembering Adam and all of that. So I feel like they could have done a little bit better with that, for sure. But I think that at the same time though, when he did die, I was so mad at Becky because I was like, why are you posting this picture of you in a bikini with this guy holding you up who's all like muscly? Like, of course Adam is going to think something's going on. And she didn't really do a good job of comforting him and saying, she's just like, oh, don't be crazy. You're paranoid. No, that is not how you comfort some of your lovers, saying that, you're the only one. You say you're the only one for me. There's nothing going on. I'll stop posting these pictures. But instead Adam is like, Becky is like, this is your problem. And I'm like, no, honey, no, that's not, like, I don't think Adam was being like crazy jealous for no reason. Like, I think that he had a reason to be uncomfortable.
Yeah. I think a big part of Becky and Adam's relationship and why they wrote it that way was as a big, like, fuck you to some of the very conservative Christians who were writing in about Adam as a character and saying, awful, terrible things about him. And so I can appreciate why they did it, but I also, in the back of my mind, kind of wanted better for Adam than that storyline. I really wanted him to be with someone who loved and appreciated him, like, from the start, for all that he is. We got such that heartbreaking story with Fiona and Adam, and that was so hard to watch. And we got a couple fake outs, like he almost dated Katie. And who else did he almost date?
Oh my god, it's a really long list, unfortunately.
Right.
Imogen, they made out.
Oh yeah, Imogen. That is one of my number one, like, in a different, universe.
Yes. Another thing I wanted to talk about in this episode is like who should have been, and I think Imogen and Adam should have been. And Imogen, actually, I think she's pansexual. She seems to, like, she said that, like, I like people. And so like she would have been perfect for him, and like they almost made it. And do you remember her ever telling Becky that they made out?
No.
Or did she just like take that to the grave?
Yeah, I think I understand why she didn't, because it would just do more harm than good. Like,
because I remember there's that really heartbreaking scene where Becky asks Imogen, like, what did he say? Like, what did he last say to you before he died? Because you were the last person to talk to him. And she was like, he was really missing you, and he said he loved you. I was like, bawling my eyes out. I cannot with that. I just think that, like, Becky, I think the reason that I was interested in her character is because I originally wanted to dislike her just because she is this, like, fundamentalist Christian, and, like, almost worse than Darcy in some ways, because Darcy did have, like, a more, like, risque phase where she was, like, doing those sexy pictures, posting online, So, and Becky didn't quite get that, but she did get this, like, oh, actually, I need to be more open-minded about things kind of phase, which I really appreciated.
Yeah. Yeah, and Claire was the more, like, honestly progressive of the Christian portrayals.
Actually, what's interesting about Claire,
Adam right away.
Yeah, what's interesting about Claire is I almost forgot she was Christian while watching.
Right.
She doesn't bring it up all the time like Darcy and Becky do. And I appreciate that, because a lot of growing up, I had a lot of Christian friends who, like, they would be like, oh, at church yesterday, blah, blah, blah. And that's the only way I knew they were Christian. Like, they didn't throw it in your face or anything. So I kind of appreciate that about Claire's character. Like, she does, especially with Allie, get judgmental, but then Allie just smacks that on down. Just like, obviously Claire and Allie are kind of the fill-ins for Emma and Manny, and you see that kind of dynamic of one being more judgmental and the other being like, look, I'm going to live my life, so get over it. Like Emma was of course, judgmental about abortion, especially about her mom getting an abortion, which I guess I could see because she could have technically not been here because of that, because Spike was in high school. But I think that, like, Emma, she has such compassion for the world, and sometimes it's hard for her to have compassion for, like, on a micro level. And I kind of see that also about Claire. She has this, like, kind of compassion for everyone. And then it's really Allie that kind of brings her down to earth. So I feel like Adam did that for Becky. He kind of brought her down to earth and was like, hey, not everyone's perfect. And you know what? You're going to make mistakes. And when you do that, you're going to hope that people still love you. So why don't you love people even when they make mistakes? It's like, be the change you want to see in the world, kind of.
Yeah. I just wanted a really happy, healthy relationship for him after he went through all that pain. And
absolutely.
We got glimpses of that with Becky and Adam, but then, like, I don't know, he was never happy, really, and it was so sad to me. I don't know.
Yeah, and then didn't Drew and, am I remembering this right? Didn't Drew and Becky also then get together later? And I was like,
disrespectful.
Drew! Which we'll get to Drew here in a second, because I debated whether or not to pick Drew and Bianca, but I did. So we can, would you like to talk about Drew and Bianca next, or do you want to talk about JD next?
Either one, whatever you want.
Let's go ahead and do JD. So this was on your list. Yes. Katie and Jake. They also are just really good looking. Like, they would make beautiful children. And I also saw her as a blonde in Next Class, and I was like, no, this is Katie, the dark hair with the bangs where she goes like slightly goth. Like, that's Katie. Yeah. That's it.
I think there's something to be said about how Chloe Rose looks good in every hair color. Like, she's it's got a gorgeous face,
not fair. Not fair. But yeah, I think that what I, like, if I could, like, maybe one of the parts where I was like, okay, I can see them being together is when they kind of have, the garden. Bond over the garden. Exactly. Yes. They're like, we're going to grow things together. And then the garden gets all messed up and they're like, we need revenge. And it's like, they really bond over it.
Yeah. I don't know why I grew so attached to Jake and Katie, but I definitely have a strong attachment to them. I think that I just really liked the, second love aspect for both of them, and how they, had these relationships that had ended poorly mostly, and how they, like, healed from that. And I don't know, I just really enjoy them and their chemistry. I think that Chloe and Justin had amazing chemistry together. They just had very cute scenes. I think I liked also that basically all of the scenes that we got with them were fairly lighthearted. And I like that, like, comic relief character, like Justin plays Jake. And I think I just really liked that. I mean, aside from Degrassi Vegas or whatever, for the most part, all of their scenes were just really cute and wholesome. So
I will say, like, one of the things I really appreciate about Jake, and let me tell you, like, right now he's on the bottom of my list for favorite characters because of him and Claire. I was like, both of you need to sit in your corner and think about what you've done.
Oh no, he's in my top 5.
That's hilarious. It's like totally opposite. But what I did like about Jake, and what I really appreciate, is his bromance with Eli, and the fact that he is the one example. Okay, every time in Degrassi, when there is, hey, there's drugs, it's always, hey, kids, don't do drugs. It turns into an after-school special. And I like how Jake is like, he smokes pot. His dad knows he smokes pot, and he just smokes pot after a long day, and he needs to chill. And I'm like, thank you. Mm-hmm. That's like the one example I can think of. Maybe you can think of another one, Jen. In Degrassi, where it's like, hey, he does drugs and his life isn't ruined. Like, it's nice to see.
It's basically just him, yeah.
Like, I'm not saying that people should be like snorting cocaine and shooting up heroin. I'm talking about marijuana, which is now legal in like 10 states and, you know, Canada. And like why wouldn't you show? It doesn't need to be positive, like, hey, kids do drugs, but, you know, not everyone who does drugs ruins their life because of it, you know? And so I think that he felt more real when that happened. And I really liked how his dad was like more chill. I never got what his dad saw in Claire's mom. Can I be honest? Because Claire's mom was so uptight, and then Jake's dad was like a latchkey kid, like parent, and you know, like whatever, let them out in the morning, and they'll come back before dark. And it's just like, okay. And then Claire's mom is like, how dare you be past 8? You know. So I
don't see how they worked out either.
I guess it's an opposite attract thing. I don't know, like with Paige and Alex, but nothing will ever be like Palix.
I think what I loved so much about Jake is also he seemed like pretty mature for a high school kid. He like, I don't know, never really got jealous of Eli that much. Even in that drama in season 11, he was like very secure in who he was. And I think that, post breakup with Claire, like, was pretty mature about everything.
He feels like he was like came out of the womb an adult. It's kind of weird. Some people are like that; they just seem adult all the time. Right. And also talking about the breakup with Claire. There's that really good scene where she's like freaking out at him or something, and he's like, "We're broken up. Like, I don't get it. Like, it's obvious that he's like moved on and she hasn't, and she gets so angry at him because he hasn't moved on, or because he has moved on and she hasn't. And so that's like a very like adult thing, is like, okay, it didn't work out, on to the next one, like, thank you, next. You like Ariana Grande it, right? So, and she's like, no, we have to have this dramatic like holding on to each other for months afterwards. And so I think he really like is a great opposite of Claire in that way.
Yeah. And I think that the way that he gave Katie space to like figure stuff out post Drew was really awesome and mature for a kid around that age too. Like, you know, obviously their first kiss was in the height of her being so upset about Drew, and you know, gave her space and time to process, and then they get together later. And I thought that it was just really cute and a mature relationship, and I can see them, you know, being together and married. You know, I think that they had the potential to last a long time, but
they definitely screamed end game. They kind of they kind of teased us with that. Like, they seemed like they were gonna make it.
Right. Yeah. You know, and I think that high school shows definitely not all couples should be endgame. I don't know.
Yeah. So, no, I think it's disingenuous to like tell, especially if you are looking for high school viewers, like, hey, you're going to end up with someone that you've already met. Like, that's the vast majority of people marry people that they meet in their 20s, not in their teens. So, heck, my mom married someone she met in her 30s. So, like, my dad. So it's like, you know, it's giving an impossible, like, kind of standard. And I do know someone who married their high school sweetheart. One person, though. Everyone else I know, they met in college or at work or, you know, on Tinder in their 30s. So I feel like that really, I liked that there wasn't really a Degrassi example of a couple making it. Not that I can think of. Can you think of one, Jen?
Simon and Alexa.
What? Who?
Did you watch the original series? Because Simon and Alexa.
Okay, you're right. Yeah, from junior high, right? The OG Degrassi. Yes. Okay.
Yeah, they started dating in like 8th grade, and they were together like, you know, for a long ever. Yeah.
So we've got one example. Like, you know, there's not like, I don't know if you've seen How I Met Your Mother, but like a Lily and Marshall is just not that common to like be together that long. So I appreciated that about Degrassi, is like, and this is something that like my when I was doing an internship, one of my boss said when I was having trouble with my partner at the time, they were like, it's just practice. Like, don't worry, you're gonna find someone, and all of this will have been preparation for that person. So, great. Do we have any last thoughts about Katie and Jake?
No, I think that's it. I mean, I just love them so much.
I also love that Katie went to Stanford, which has a really famous girls soccer team. I was like, that was so great. They really did their research on American universities.
Yes.
So
Although,
also the
I don't
Stanford
know why
campus is
so
gorgeous.
many. Yeah. I don't know why so many Degrassi characters want to move to the US, though.
Yeah, and
Like,
specifically California. But if you like, I have a lot of friends who are international. Like that is the only New York and California are the only states that they know. So it's
Right,
like that's
exactly.
where they apply every time, which is why it's so competitive as an international student to go to a New York or a California university.
right.
Okay, so I think we have one more left, and it is the couple that like I don't know why. But I just love Drew and Bianca, and I'm glad
Yeah.
they didn't get married. Don't get me wrong. And when they got engaged, I was like, Bianca, girl, you're gonna have to cut that off because it's not. He's a good practice, but he is not gonna be like the guy for you. Especially when she got like so was doing so well academically and was getting out of her kind of like frankly like white trash phase, even though she's not white. I was like, how about no? She got better as far as like goals and wanting to go to university and, you know, being successful and doing things for herself rather than relying on, I mean, she was, you know, boiler room Bianca. She was kind of seen as this, you know, and I don't like to use this term because I think it's such a gendered term, but like they, you know, they called her a slut. You know, she ended up having one of the most meaningful and long-term relationships in Degrassi, really proving everyone wrong that like she can commit, she can fall in love, she can be a one woman man and have him, you know, commit to her. And it is like automatically not a good relationship because they got together because he cheated on Allie. So it automatically like they started off not great. But I think that like the whole plot with Vince and everything, like getting caught up in the gang stuff was just like, it's chef's kiss. Like it was so captivating at the time. It was when I first saw it, I was like, oh my God, like is Drew gonna get stabbed like JT? Like I was really worried for both of them. And that really, like they bonded over that and you're like, this is gonna make them closer, but in the end it should, like they should be apart because that trauma is too much to have a healthy relationship.
Yeah. I mean, when you talk about chemistry, I feel like Drew and Bianca like had that by the truckload. Like, you know, you can definitely tell that like this couple was really into each other, and you know, obviously they hurt some people along the way, and you know, it made things awkward. But you know, I did really enjoy them, and obviously they were like meant to be. But I don't know. I guess I never got attached to either character by themselves. So I'm much more of a character person, honestly, than a ship person. So
yeah,
I think that's
which is surprising. Like, this is my first Degrassi episode, which is all about shipping, but whatever.
Yeah. I think that's why I never got attached to them, because I didn't care about either of their relationships on their own, or either of their like, you know, paths on their own as much as, you know, I did for other characters. So I don't know. Or like their friendships really outside of other, like each other. I don't know. I think that's why I didn't get attached to them as much as I have other ships. But I think that their chemistry was, you know, 10 out of 10 for sure.
I think another reason that I like them is her relationship with his mom, Audra. I think that like that was so great. And I remember there was this scene where she was like, I can't do that to Audra. Like, she's like a mom to me. And Drew's like, really? And I'm like, Drew, you're so fucking stupid. Of course. She hasn't had a strong, you know, mother figure in her life. She's gonna, you know, latch on to what for a while was gonna be her future mother-in-law. So I was just like, Drew, how do you not get this? Like, this is why she's too good for you. Like, she of course would, you know, be all about finding a mother figure.
Yeah. I think I could have really grown attached to Bianca a lot more had we seen more of her like friendships with other people outside of Drew. I think that, you know, so much of who her character was for his growth. And I wish we had gotten to see more female friendships, you know, and stuff like that. But yeah, I did really appreciate the Audra and Bianca relationship a lot. It's one of my favorite parent kid dynamics, even though they're not like related. But yeah.
And I think actually, I believe it was Annie Clark. I was just on Degrassi Wiki, fandom wiki, randomly a couple days ago. I think it was Annie Clark who said that Bianca is her favorite character. And then the girl who plays Bianca said that Fiona Coyne is her favorite character. And I thought that was really cute.
That is really
I was like,
cute.
So I was like, oh, that's sweet. But yeah, I think that Bianca definitely deserves something better. And I think they kind of took the whole she doesn't get along with other women thing way too far.
Right.
Because I think she ended up kind of becoming BFFs. Was it with Imogen? I forget. She kind of became BFFs with another girl.
Yeah, she had a scene where it seemed like they were going to be friends, like close friends. And then, you know, when Drew was living with Fiona, like they got a little bit closer. But we didn't get really very many one-on-one female friendships. And honestly, I would have liked them to take that direction with Katie and Bianca. Instead
that
of
would have been
having
good.
as much animosity as they had, I feel like they could have taken it in a different direction. I don't know.
Yeah, the classic like guy gets between them kind of thing.
Right.
I feel like Degrassi could have flipped that on its head and been like, no, they actually like bond over the fact that they share, you know, had the same boyfriend. But yeah, I feel like Degrassi is not always the best about female relationships. And what's weird is then they'll like totally kill it with the male relationships, like the bromances, like Drew and Dallas and Eli and Adam. And I'm like, why can't you do this for everyone?
Yeah,
like for the
Jake
girls
and Mel.
too.
I love Jake and Mel.
Yes, exactly. And I feel like it just kind of, I feel like it over like it's a little sexist to be like women are always going to see each other as competition and can't get along if they like the same guy.
Yeah.
So that's our favorite couples. Let's just since we're pretty much at the hour and a half mark, just what are the couples that should not have been for you, Jen, where you were like, stop it, Degrassi, just stop it?
Yeah. I think, one that stands out that we kind of already talked about was Drew and Becky. Thank you.
No thanks. Adam is rolling over in his grave.
I think I hated basically all of Jonah's relationships. I did not like Jonah that much as a character.
Oh, God, Jonah. God. Yeah. Seriously. And he's like, I can't have sex with you because, like, I've been bad in the past. And it's like, you're punishing women now for, like, your mistakes in the past. Like, stop it, Jonah. Stop it. Yes, and literally anything with Jonah. I totally agree.
I feel like they were like throwing things at his character to see what stuck, and then like none of it made sense. And I don't know. I just didn't like it at all.
While we're doing like
especially hated him and Frankie. I hated that relationship
that's
so much.
Disgusting. While we're on the blanket statements, Maya, like anything with Maya, any of her, I didn't like her with Zig. I didn't like her with Miles. I didn't like her with. She was sort of kind of with that sod guy a little bit, not like fully, but they had this like weird dysfunctional relationship. I don't really like what they did with. I liked Maya herself, but I don't like what they did with her character in general. And I think actually, like of all the quote unquote musical characters, she was the most talented, hands down. Like even more talented than Greg. So anything with Maya. I will say also, this is really early. Actually, probably the first relationship. Ashley and Jimmy was never here for it.
Yeah, me neither.
I was like, no. And as far as like a couples that like I wish could have happened, I actually kind of wanted Toby and Liberty to seriously get together.
Oh yeah,
because like he did like her, but I don't think they really got together, did they?
I don't know. No, not really. Before we move on completely from characters or relationships we really hated, Allie and Johnny. Oh my god, they're like number one.
I'm sorry, like that is the most disgusting. And I love she actually has that line later where she's like, "Look, I dated this guy and he was super greasy and gross." And I was like, "Thank you, Allie. Like, why were you?" I think it was just because he was older. He had this like mystique about him, and the fact that he actually didn't want to be out there as a couple, I think actually made her want to be in a couple more.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Definitely.
I just don't see the ship potential at all. I don't know. He was so bad to her for like their whole relationship. I know he like got a little bit of redemption in season 10, but at that point I just really did not care. Especially because he was there when JT died. I don't know. I had just always carried bad
the Lakehurst kids in general, like I think they honestly could have just not with the Lakehurst kids. I feel like they were like, oh crap, we need to introduce more characters. Oh yeah, there's this other school. Let's just say their school burned down and now they're at Degrassi. I'm like, what? No.
Yeah, they were definitely scrambling in 6 and 7. Like, oh, our cast is like leaving us. We have to find a way to fill this void. I don't know.
Another couple I could not stand was Sav and Anya. It was they were like so lovey-dovey. Like it was. I'm not a fan.
I wasn't
and the fact that like
I can't say I like hated them, but I didn't love them. Yeah.
And the fact that they're like they both have sticker books was like repeated like 5 times. I'm like, how is this a plot point? Like what?
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like they wanted it to work way more than it did work. I know. So,
what did you think about the Claire and Eli epic romance that was took up like 4 seasons?
Right. I found it really interesting that neither of us picked Eli and Claire. Neither of us picked Sean and Emma. You know, these like big
classic ones.
Romances.
Yeah.
I think that I liked Eli and Claire at some points and then hated them at other points. So I don't know. It was just
it's such a roller coaster, their whole relationship.
Definitely.
And the baggage that he had was like, it was just so many red flags. I would have just like swerved hard if I were her. But
right. I think that if their relationship had ended at season 12, I would have like appreciated. I would have really Claire. But seasons 13 and 14 just kind of like, I don't know. Especially
you were cutting out there for a second, but I think
Claire.
Yeah, you were cutting out for a second, but I think I get what you're saying, where it's like you're talking about like kind of the whole pregnancy plot line could have like not happened, right?
Yeah. I mean, oh my gosh, seasons 13 and 14, a mishmash of like random stuff. I don't know. They were just like, they didn't know what to do with anyone, so they were just like, oh, we're putting these 2 characters together, we're going to see what happens with this. I don't know, they just didn't think things through as much in 13 and 14. I don't think,
I think you're right. I think they got I felt a little bit of cockiness in the later seasons where it's like, it's Degrassi, you're going to watch it, you've been here for 12 seasons, and I'm like, no, you still have to work for it.
Right.
So yeah, because for me, like I think that the best is like the first 9 seasons. Frankly,
yeah.
Like I think that's like the best Degrassi next gen, and then like 11 is pretty. 10 and 11 is pretty good, and then like 12, 13, 14, like especially 13, 14, it really starts to go off the rails. And I feel like they kind of wanted Maya Matlin to be the next Emma as far as like being the focus of the show, and I feel like Emma's character, she was definitely able to hold her own as like kind of this starring kind of role. And Maya Matlin I just don't think a strong enough character to do that.
Oh, see, I love Maya.
I do too, but like I feel like they were putting way too much on her.
I liked Maya a lot as a character, but I definitely agree that the first seasons are my favorite. And I think honestly it depends on what you want out of the show, what I think is going to be your favorite. So I mean they're almost like 3 different shows, so it's completely dependent on what you want out of the show. I think the first seasons did really great at like character development and friendships and stuff like that. I think going into 10 through 12 especially, it was like relationships were the big focus, and also like what kind of crazy plot lines can they go through? I don't know. And then with the next class, it was more like a little bit of social justice, whatever, and kind of, social media type of stuff. So
Yeah, like
I
growing
think,
up with technology, kind of.
right,
Yeah,
exactly. So I think it depends on what you want out of the show, which
definitely.
you're gonna go glom onto.
Great. Yeah. So I think this is a really great place to stop then, Jen. I do have one more question though. Who is your favorite Degrassi teacher?
Oh my goodness! Oh my gosh! Um, there's so many. I love a lot of them, but I think I'm gonna go Miss Kwan. I love
Oh my
Miss
god, I
Kwan.
was gonna say Miss Kwan. I love her so much, especially like I just listened a couple of episodes ago to the episode where you covered that the season 1 where Jimmy and Ashley are like making out, and she's like,
Oh
"You
yeah,
two might think you're
you're
cute,
not
but
as
like,
cute as you think you are. Yeah,
yeah, it's like you might think you're adorable, but no one else does." And
right.
like, the way that she like plays off of Spinner's slacker, like
Yeah.
I love it. I would say though, like almost my favorite teacher, it was almost Miss O, but the Saf storyline killed it for me. I was like, no, the fact that you're even thinking about being with one of your students, you're on my shit list.
Oh my God. I
Miss
can't even
O
think
actually,
about her without thinking about that.
I know. Miss O played in Instant Star as Karma too.
I did, yeah.
So
I
love to see her. She's so talented, but I'm like, dude, why did you do that to Miss O? She was like the I wanted her to be like that example of that young hip teacher who doesn't want to fuck her students. Like,
right? Oh my God.
Why? They always mess it up.
I also really loved Mr. Armstrong. He was
Oh
one of my other favorites.
he was great, and he coached everything.
Oh yeah,
like
that
literally
man never
every
sleeps.
sport. He never sleeps. He's either thinking about math or sports. I will say also, I really liked, a lot of people don't, but I liked Mr. Perino because he was really strict about deadlines and everything. Like, I felt like he was really preparing the kids for college. And I know that like that made him look like an asshole, but I do think he really cared about like professional development. And the Degrassi kids were just like no, we have like love triangles and drugs and stuff that we need to worry about. We can't worry about history.
I just wonder like why they put in that storyline of him with Derek.
Yes, I've always wondered that.
And like never revisited it. I don't know.
Never. And it's like, and then Perino was not mean anymore. And it's like, no, an abuser is always gonna be an abuser. Like, really? He just got like he just got a talking to from Snake, and that was it. And actually, Derek is one of those characters where I'm like, he could have just not been in there. Like, he literally didn't get a storyline.
No.
Like, he was Danny's friend, and that's it. Like, that sucks.
I hate that character. Poor friggin' Mark Donato who plays him. I feel like everyone hates this character. So
yeah,
I don't know.
Sure he was one of those characters. But... Like, also like who was the guy we were just talking about who dated Allie who was gross? What is his name?
Oh, Johnny.
Yeah. Then he had that random friend. It was like, this guy doesn't need to be here. What, like Bruce? Yeah, it's like, why are you here?
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I actually when I first met Mo, I thought the same thing about him, and then he had such a great storyline with like he actually made me care about Marisol, and I was like, wow, that's some good writing. If I all of a sudden care about Marisol because I always hated her.
Yeah. Oh, I love that friendship group, Jake and Mo and Marisol and Katie, and I think probably them bringing Jake into it is what like sold me. So.
And the Going to France was the other one of the Degrassi. I knew there was a fourth like destination for Degrassi. They also had that like summer program in France thing, which was interesting.
Strange.
That was like, what is happening? Yes. Awesome. So Jen, why don't you tell the listeners again where to find you, and again about kind of the premise of your podcast about the Stan and the never seen before.
Yes. So yeah, I am the Degrassi Stan. Lisa is the Degrassi newbie on our podcast. And we are available basically wherever you get your podcasts. We're on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher. If you don't see us on a platform and you want us there, you can always DM us and we'll look into it. So you can follow us on Twitter at GoCanadianAPod. I run that Twitter and talk about spoilers on the Twitter. Lisa is not allowed
Yes,
on
spoiler
there.
alert, which you shouldn't have watched this whole thing if you were afraid of spoilers anyway.
Right.
So
Yeah. We also have a Facebook group called Lisa and Jen Go Canadian A. That is spoiler free. And Lisa and Laura are both in that group.
Oh my gosh, I have to join it right now. I did not know about this Facebook group.
Yes.
Opening my Facebook app right now.
Perfect. And we also have a TikTok, Go Canadian A Pod. And that's basically all the socials on. But yeah, it's so fun. I love running this podcast. We've been doing it for coming up on a year. In July, it'll be a year. So
how exciting. Fun. I've enjoyed going on the journey with you all. Like I recently just started listening, but I'm almost caught up. Actually, I was on a plane ride, unfortunately, during COVID, but I was moving, so I had to move from one place to another, and so I had to get my body from one state to another, so I had to fly.
Right.
Not fun. But I was on the plane, and I had like downloaded like 4 or 5 of your episodes before getting on the plane, and so I was just listening to you and Lisa tell me all about Degrassi, and I love the dynamic between someone who has seen it and someone who hasn't. That is so fast, especially when she's like, oh, I hope so and so and so and so get together, and you're just like, I say nothing.
I'm like holding myself
really
back.
Funny. Yeah, it's so funny. Yeah, so dear listeners, please check out Lisa and Jen Go Canadian A, and do the best thing you can do is give it that sweet 5-star review on your podcast platform, especially Apple Podcasts, because the Apple Podcast algorithm is like the YouTube algorithm. It is a really nasty beast, and it demands to be fed. So please give them that 5-star review. They deserve it. They work really hard, and they have a really good time talking Degrassi. So please check out that. And Jen, I really hope to have you back on, because I have been holding in all of my Degrassi thoughts for years. It's nice to finally talk about them with someone.
Yes, and we would love to have you on our podcast at some point in the future too.
That would be so fun, and I promise I will be good about spoilers in front of Lisa. I will wink at you, so you'll know that I know, but she won't know.
Yeah, if there's any episodes that stand out to you that you like would have a lot to talk about, DM me.
Oh, definitely. Definitely season 3. I have like so many thoughts. Like 3, 4, and 5 are like my sweet spot in Degrassi. So I will definitely let you know.
Perfect. Sadly, with season 3, we've already got it planned out. How who's going to be on it? But 4 and 5 are definitely open. So awesome. Definitely hit me up.
There's some good episodes up for grabs there, so that's great.
Yes.
Well, great. Thank you so much again, Jen, for joining me. And like I said, please check out Lisa and Jen Go Canadian A. And I don't know why I had to say it like that. And please check me out, Amy Blackfire. That's AEMY Blackfire with a Y. I am on YouTube, and I am on all podcast platforms, including Podbean. And if you also want to give me a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, I would greatly appreciate that. I've gotten a couple of them already, and they warm my heart. And yeah, please check me out on Twitter, and also follow Go Canadian Pod for Twitter. All of the links will be in the description for your convenience. Thanks again, Jen, for coming, and I cannot wait to talk more Degrassi with you in the future.
Thank you.